And we are live. Welcome, mystery and thriller fans. I'm your on-air host, Sara DiVello, and I am so excited to welcome tonight Lara Elena Donnelly here to tell us about her brand new book, Base Notes. Lara, welcome to Mystery and Thriller Mavens. Tell us about this book.
Hi, I am so excited to be here. Thank you so much for having me. About this book, this is the part that I am still not good at, despite having to pitch this book in a condensed manner many times over to many different people. I'm still like, I don't know. It's about stuff. Base Notes is about a niche perfumer who runs an indie perfume house called Bright House. The perfumer, Vic Fowler, is really trying to keep this business afloat and failing because New York is a really expensive place to live, let alone try to run a small business. But luckily, Vic, like many cash-strapped millennials, has got a sweet side hustle going on. And that sweet side hustle is that for a quite high price, Vic can create a perfume for you that exactly recreates a memory from your past, and we're not just talking like, oh, the smell of fresh cut grass, it reminds me of my childhood. This is like, if you wear this perfume, you will relive the moment. You will relive it exactly as if it is happening to you all over again. The catch is that to make this perfume of this moment, anyone else who appears in this memory has to be rendered into an ingredient for the perfume. So Vic effectively has a side hustle in murder for hire, because the sort of side effect of creating these perfumes is that a lot of people have to die to make them. And usually Vic has been operating alone, just one murder here, one murder there. But an old client turns up and is like, I have a special request, a special commission, but it's a type of memory you've never had to make before. You don't know if you can do it. And I need you to murder 4 people, all of my business partners, and they're all people that you've worked with before. So it's like a lot of murders all at once, and there are a lot of strings that could connect the whole thing back to Vic, which means Vic's got to turn manager and delegate tasks. And by tasks, I mean murders.
The challenge of anybody who's been promoted to manager is to learn to delegate. You can't just be a worker bee. You have to be a
No,
delegator. And
you have to put your Legos down. Let go of them. Put down the Legos.
Vic has to learn that hard lesson that we've all had to learn, but Vic's lesson is in murder. Okay. Oh my God. Okay. A lot of questions are popping into my mind. I'm also making a mental note to stay on your good side because I like to be alive. So I'm going to get right into it. But first, I just want to welcome everybody. We are streaming live to 6 different places simultaneously right now on Facebook and YouTube. So wherever you're watching from, you're in the right place. This is the right time. Let's talk to Lara. Let's get your questions going. They're already happening. Anissa Joy Armstrong says, hello, Sara and Lara from cold South Carolina. You're not as cold as we are, girl. You're not.
I don't know. It's weirdly warm in New York today. I'm going to be warm all week. So maybe it's chillier in South Carolina.
Maybe it is. Darla says, hello from Portland, Oregon. Darla, welcome back. Always a pleasure to have you. Thank you so much for joining us. Anise is saying, one murder here, one murder there. Just a Tuesday for Vic. Lara, let's get into it. What on earth gave you this idea?
So I keep joking that Jude Doyle, who wrote this article that inspired this book, is going to get a whole bunch of Google alert hits and be super freaked out and be like, who is this person who's talking about me? Yeah. But way back in January 2014, I don't know, sometime back in the mists of time, I read this article in The Guardian called My Search for the Great American Perfume by Jude Doyle. And it sort of posited the idea that there was not yet an American perfume as famous as Chanel No. 5 or whatever, because the famous perfume houses of Europe were not afraid to make scents that stunk a little, that smelled like sex and like sweat and like a body, you know, like they smelled like a body. Uh, and American people broadly did not want to smell this way. And the people who were making perfumes for the American market were like, well, people here don't want to smell nasty. You know, they want to smell clean cut and all American. So like the article was all about Jude Doyle going out to try to find, were there any perfumers in America who were making weird, sexy perfume? Yeah, they were not afraid to make something that stank. And when I read this, I was like, wow, this is very fascinating. And I got very into perfume for a little while. Well, I mean, like that was the beginning of me being into perfume. And a couple of months later, I was asked to participate in an anthology. And the theme of the anthology was like, we want short stories that are somehow related to the color orange. And so I thought back on this article. And one of the things that Doyle had pointed out was that a lot of American perfumes had a strong scent of orange blossoms, because orange blossoms smell very clean and in some ways sometimes smell like laundry detergent. Like they're very like that sort of sweet, cute floral fragrance that you think of when you think of something that smells like flowers. And I was like, oh, this is it. I'm going to write a short story about a perfumer who makes dirty American perfumes. So that short story was published in that anthology, and then later it was reprinted at Nightmare magazine. It's still online. It's called The Dirty American. It's effectively like a prequel for this novel, so there aren't really any spoilers. You can go find it. And then a couple of years went by because I was like I had my debut novel Amberlow came out, and then I was contracted to write 2 sequels, and then I had a couple of different day jobs, and life happened. But once the Amberlow dossier trilogy was all wrapped up, my agent at the time was like, okay, what are you going to work on next? And I had a sort of stack of little ideas that I was like, this could be the next book, this could be the next book, this could be the next book. And the least well-formed one, the one where I was like, I have one sentence about what this will be. And that one sentence is like, I wrote this short story. I could make it a novel, maybe. That was the one that my agent and my editor at the time were both like, yeah, do that. So then I had to kind of quickly figure out how I was going to turn it into a book.
Oh my gosh, this is crazy. Almost as crazy as the idea itself. I am here for it. Building a book on one sentence, your least fleshed out, pun intended, idea there. Lara, this is so crazy. Oh my gosh. Okay. Megan says, Megan Underwood says, here is the article. Okay, perfect. I am going to put it in the comments, just make sure everybody gets it.
Thank you, Megan.
Thanks, Megan. So here it is. In case anybody wants to see it, the link is in the comments. Okay, so you got very into perfume. I just am loving the idea that Europeans wouldn't make a stinky, dirty body, sweat, sexy. Because I don't want to. I mean, usually you wear perfume to smell better, not sweaty or dirty.
But you say that, right? But so many perfumes have this note of like civet, which is a famous perfume component. When you think about like smelling, it's like it's what in perfumery, there's a class of elements called animalics, because they're made of things that come from animals, right? So musk is one. When we say, oh, it smells musky, right? Usually when you say that, you're like, it smells kind of like hot, like man smell, like it's like when you're like, oh, he had a musk, right? Romance novels do this all the time. They're like, oh, he smelled musky and like pine and leather, right? When we say it smells like leather, what do we mean? We say like leather is skin, it's cured skin, and musk comes from a gland that's taken from a special species of deer, civet, which is used in a lot of like really sexy vampy perfumes, a lot of like men's fragrances. It comes from, I don't know how graphic we're allowed to get on this podcast, but it comes from a special kind of cat-like creature that has a secretion on its private areas, and they would scrape it off these cats' private parts and turn it into perfume. There's ambergris, which is whale poop that sits on the bottom of the ocean floor for a long time. They make perfume.
Back in
Yeah,
the day or now,
now,
2022?
now, 2022. Yeah,
What?
there's
Okay,
stuff that
Anissa
comes
Joy
from
is
there's
all of us
stuff
right
that
now.
comes
She's
from
saying,
Hyrax P. I could go on.
okay, so civet, an animal product from the private area of cats. I can't believe that this is, I mean, I thought you were talking about the 1600s when they didn't have anything. Darla is saying she will never wear perfume again. Darla, same. I'll be over here with my lavender essential oil, trying to trying to get myself to a happy, calm place.
Wait, you want to hear? I'm gonna ruin this one for you also. So jasmine, right?
And I
Jasmine's
love the
a
smell of
flower.
jasmine.
It's a
Okay.
flower. It smells beautiful. I think we can all agree that jasmine smells beautiful and does not involve the private parts of any cats.
Yes.
So if you read that Jude Doyle article, one of the things that I learned from it is that jasmine smells the way it does because it has a molecule in it called an indole. The whole thing, like, it's just an element of the larger scent of jasmine, this molecule, but it is the same molecule that makes excrement smell bad. So just a little bit of this in the broader scent of the jasmine flower, just a little bit of this molecule sort of sets off the rest of it and gives it like a depth that it wouldn't otherwise have. Sorry. Sorry.
Okay. Lara, there is so much happening. Okay. Anissa Joy Armstrong, who's an amazing bookstagrammer. She does a lot with Friends in Fiction. She does stuff with Jenna Bush Hagar. She's a big deal. Welcome to the conversation, ma'am. She is saying this is fascinating research, and I totally agree. So clearly, somebody's done their homework, and it's you. Let's talk about the research process. So, first of all, how long did it take you? Second of all, were you out there scraping cats and collecting whale poop? I mean, we need to know more about the research.
So I was not scraping cats and collecting whale poop, mainly because the cat scraping is like super regulated now, and it's actually quite rare that perfumes use real civet for many reasons. And ambergris is so appallingly rare that if someone had found one, like I probably would not have been able to find one if I went out looking for it. Anyway, I was not doing that, but I did do a lot of reading, and I also went to a couple of like live events. I went to a perfume mixing course that was put on by Andrea Bifulco of Nose University. That was really fascinating, and she turned out to be a great resource. Andrea, if you're listening, thank you so much. You were really helpful and very kind. I was also really lucky to be able to talk to a couple of small business owners who run their own niche indie perfumeries. So Chris Rusak of Chris Rusak and Carter Weeks Maddox of Chronotope were both really, really generous in reading parts of the manuscript and like answering my questions. I did a lot of reading of like internet forums of perfume hobbyists, because those are the kinds of people who were like, I wonder if I could try this somewhat dangerous process in my basement. Like, what would happen if I tried to distill something? And other people being like, don't use a still in your basement. It could create, dangerous fumes. Like, you should definitely do it in the backyard. So it was really helpful to just like have the breadth of weird stuff that people are doing recorded on the internet. And also I just read like normal books. So we were talking before we got started about Luca Turin. I read Chandler Burr's The Emperor of Scent, which is about Luca Turin, who's like a famous chemist and general scientific polymath, but also like a great appreciator of perfumes. And a lot of his research was into how the human apparatus, so like not just the brain, but also your like nasal passages and everything that connects them to your brain, how it is able to process all of these many different scents that we encounter day to day. I don't even remember what all books I read. I read some weird academic papers about like the fact that historically we haven't been able to categorize ambergris because for a long time we didn't know what it was. We were just like, it's this weird lump that washes up out of the ocean and it smells really good. We don't know what it is, so we'll categorize it with other uncategorizable things like lightning. We don't know what that is either. I read a great academic paper about the concept of skank and like queer culture and perfume. That was a really good read. Basically, I just read a bunch of stuff that was tangentially related to perfume. And then I wrote this book, and as I came across issues that I didn't know how to solve, I would reach out to people to try to answer questions that I was coming up with as I wrote. So, I didn't know all the answers when I started, especially how do you tincture an entire human body in alcohol? Luckily, I have a friend who's a pathologist or a former pathologist, and I was able to ask him, so how long would this take? Would it be possible? If it was possible, how would you do it? How would you, make sure that even though the outside of the body was submerged in alcohol, the inside of the body wouldn't be. We had a very gruesome conversation about about how Vic goes about the business of turning people's bodies into perfume elements.
This is fascinating and very unexpected. So crazily, my sister was for many years a massage therapist, and so she in massage school had to go to an autopsy and
What?
study prosected bodies to learn about the muscles and the tendons and how to really look in there. And so she said that actually they really smell badly, very, very badly. And so they would have you put Vicks Vapor Rub
Oh
up your
yeah.
nose so that you wouldn't gag or pass out or, vomit from the smell of the body.
I
So
wonder though, like, do they smell badly because of how they've been preserved? Is it like the smell of the preservative that is so horrible, or is it like
I
the
think
smell of the body?
So I think it's both, because by the time they get, prosected and are, being studied in this way, it's not like they're just a like fresh body, not a term I thought I'd use, a fresh body, but they, have been dead for a while. And also it is, I think, the formaldehyde, but also whatever decomposition. So this is so interesting. Anissa is saying she's so intrigued by this book now that she must download it as soon as we are done here.
That's
So
what we like to hear.
yeah, exactly. So I want to remind everyone. So this book has been out for 6 days, and you can get your copy tonight and support a woman-owned independent bookstore, our favorite, Murder by the Book. So I'm going to grab the link. I'm popping it into the comments right now, because I think after all this talk about this, you're going to want to grab base notes right now. So here it is for everybody. Grab it right now. Because now you have to, right? This is crazy. Okay, we have so many comments pouring in, so many questions, and I want to get to every single one of them because
How many of them are like, ugh?
I don't think I see, I think I only see one.
Oh, nice. Audience with a strong stomach.
Debbie's saying this is a creepy premise for the perfume. Yucky, right, Debbie? She's saying hello from sunny Arizona. Welcome to the conversation, Debbie. Always such a pleasure to have you. Always such a pleasure to see your name pop up. Thanks for joining us today. And I'm seeing hi, Sara and Lara. So glad to be here. It is not warm in Massachusetts. And that's from Catch a Clue. Hey, Wendy, great to have you. Thank you so much. Cheryl Schultz is saying, wow. Cheryl, I think you are speaking for all of us, right? Because this is quite a wow moment. So many, actually, right?
I hope no one was like eating dinner when they tuned into this. Sorry.
Yeah, someone's like, this will be fun. I'll just sit at home and eat my thing. Darla saying sometimes the jasmine plant can have a funny smell. I did not know that. I think of jasmine as such a lovely smell. Thank you.
But now you know why.
Now I know why. Anissa saying, Sara, always asking the important questions. I love it. Darla saying, we're getting a great education. Darla, right? Like I have learned so much. Okay, just want to make sure I'm not missing anybody. I think Darla saying she can't wait to read it. Absolutely. Darla, here is the link right now for everybody. So grab your base notes. So Lara, you are earning wonderful praise. So Kirkus, the notoriously, I think New York Times called them notoriously cranky and reliably.
We love them, but they're like the grumpy uncle where you're like.
They are the grumpy uncle, and yet they loved this. Raving scent is everything, and Donnelly's unique, voluptuous thriller. Manhattan's beau monde served up in juicy, evocative prose. I want to eat that review. It sounds tasty. Let's take it Yum, 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 yum. Let's take it piece by piece. Okay, so why? First of all, I love the use of the word voluptuous, and congratulations on unique. What do you think, from a craft perspective, makes this book voluptuous, full-bodied, fabulous?
Oh, voluptuous. Well, so I will cop to being a writer who always wants to sink into the sensory detail. So
Okay.
pretty much if I have written a thing, there will definitely be a scene about food, there will probably be a scene about sex, and there will be definitely a lot of descriptions of clothes and probably descriptions of every other sort of like sensory experience that the characters have. It's not just about trying to describe like what's happening in the scene. I mean, it is about describing what's happening in the scene, but also just like really putting the character in a space. So I someone asked me a bit ago, like, wow, do you notice smells more than other people? And I was like, I don't know. I don't know how much you guys notice smells, right? But it's true that I almost always, when I go into a space or I'm doing an activity, like I always am smelling stuff. It's very strange to me to conceive of an experience that doesn't have that, or that like people don't immediately go, oh my God, what's that smell? Or like, oh wow, what is that? Um, so I think voluptuous in this case is referring to just like the complete sensory experience of the book, because it's all like Vic, a perfumer, always is noticing smells, but Vic, a snob, and an appreciator of like the finer things, and an aesthete, let's say. Vic notices not just smells, but like is like what kind and quality of clothes is that person wearing? Like, does this person have art on their walls? What does this food taste like? What is the mouth feel of this wine? Like, I love to write things that really sink the reader into the sensory experience that the characters are all having.
I love that and I respect that because I am also a person who I definitely smell things a lot. My husband always says he's like, I don't smell what you're smelling, and I'm always like, someone smoking a cigarette 5 miles from here, or
Not to get gender essentialist about this, but I have talked to a lot of people who are like, oh yeah, the men that I know can't smell when milk has gone off. And I also have talked to several people who are going through like medical transition, and people who are transitioning like M2F are like, yes, my sense of smell got much keener after I started taking estrogen, or vice versa. People who are transitioning medically from F2M are like, yeah, I noticed that I couldn't smell as strongly when I started taking testosterone.
oh, that's
Uh,
fascinating.
so, so I'm sure there are men out there who can smell if milk has gone off, but not all of them.
Not all of them. I mean, I've always said like I'm like a dog. I mean, the dog and I smell. Are both of us. Our nose will start twitching, and smells are so. I read that smell more than any other sense can take you back to a specific moment. So for me, like my grandmother's bathroom always smelled like yellow dial soap, and so as soon as I smell yellow dial soap, not the white one, the yellow one, I'm like. Nana DeVello's bathroom, and I'm flooded with all this love for her and these memories of her, and I can feel her in my heart from just smelling a bar of yellow dial soap. And I've always read that that smell is the most powerful sense. So when you smell homemade cookies or a roasting turkey for Thanksgiving or a fir tree or whatever, you're like Christmas, Thanksgiving, the time I went to camp, and you're immediately back in that moment. So I was so fascinated by the premise of your book because I thought, did you have a moment you wished to go back to your life and you wanted to build yourself a little a sensory time machine?
So actually, that element of the novel is like not present in the short story at all. And when I went to go make this into a novel, I was like, there has to be something more about the perfume, because this is a spoiler for the short story. It does end with a person getting turned into perfume, but like nothing special happens about it. It's just sort of like a wonderful, ironic twist to the end. But when I went to go turn this into a book, I was like, okay, so the main character turns people into perfumes, but why bother? Why bother to have a whole book about someone turning people into perfumes if it doesn't do something beyond just like disposing of a body when you murder them? And so I had to figure out what I wanted the perfumes to do. And I was like, well, if I am a fantasy writer trying to transition gracefully to like this like pan genre appeal, like I want to have some element of the speculative present in here, but I don't want it to be like magic. So I was thinking about like what does scent do? And the thing that it does more than almost anything else is like sink people into these incredibly intense experiences of memory. And I
Yes.
was like, okay, we can roll with that. And I think I went to like a group of my writer friends and was like, okay, guys, I got to do something with like perfume and memory, and like you kill people and put them in the perfume, and it does something like it memory magic somehow. And so we were able to workshop this into like, well, obviously the perfumes can give you a perfect replica of a memory, but whoever's in the memory has to be in the perfume.
Mm.
Um, yeah, and that's what also birthed the central problem of the novel, which is that Eisner, who is we call him villain, he's an antagonist. He wants Vic to make a perfume that will help him remember a moment that never happened to him. He's like, I
Mhm.
know this moment happened. It happened in reality. I wasn't there, but I need to know what happened. And so Vic is like, oh God, how am I going to create a memory that you don't have? Like, you're not going to be reliving a memory you already have.
Mm.
It's like recreating an entire scenario that you never experienced.
Yeah, well, yeah, and I love that because I'll be honest, I have fantasized about having a time machine, and I think all the time about the moment in time that I would go back to. I'd go back to the 1920s, but I also think to myself, maybe I'd go back and see, whatever happened to the Lindbergh baby, or maybe I'd go back and see where Amelia Earhart, went. Like I have all these ideas. I want to go back to, the court of Henry VIII that did Catherine of Aragon really not be, what was her relationship with her brother? I mean, I have so many questions. like, so this is fascinating. So, and I love how you talk about it as being, transitioning from the fantasy genre to the mystery and thriller genre. Also, you are writing in a way that one might describe as literary. I don't know if that resonates for you, but the way that you describe scent, even just the way you describe nature, even like one of the things I outlined was the open windows let in a breeze and the rich aroma of wet dirt turned by plow and soaked with rain. It's beautiful. I mean, it's really poetic. Let's talk about that. Do you think you write poetically? Do you think you write literary? Do you want to? Do you care? What's that about for you?
I hope so. I'm a big believer in prose. I actually got into
Mhm.
an argument one time with it was like me and another writer on one side of in one corner we have Lara Donnelly and Max Gladstone. In the other corner we have an editor who probably knows better than either of the writers what's likely to sell. And we got into this friendly argument that where like the writers were sort of like prose is very important. The quality of prose is very important. It's one of the things that when we both reading, we're like, if the prose are not compelling, it's going to be a harder book to get through, or like it won't be as enjoyable. And the editor was like, prose are nice, but the important thing is like telling a story. We're specifically having this argument about Game of Thrones. Sorry to any Game of Thrones stands out there. I think the pros are what we charitably call workman-like. They get the job done. They're like, here's the story. We're telling the story. This person does this thing and they feel this way about it. Um, and I used to slush read, which is like when you're the person reading the short stories that come into the magazine from everyone who submits to the magazine. I used to slush read for a fantasy magazine, and I would kind of know, like if I picked something up and I read the first couple of paragraphs, if the prose were like not doing the work, I'd be like, the rest of the story is probably not going to be great. If the prose are like not pulling their weight, I don't know about the rest of it. And I would entertain stories that I probably should not have if they could trick me into thinking that if they were like, we have beautiful prose, I'd be like, okay, I'll read a couple more pages of this. But I think prose are incredibly important, even if they're simple, right? So like we talk about workman like prose, and by we, I mean I talked about workman like prose. But I think there's like a difference between those and sort of like simple, elegant, or spare prose. Like that's a artistic choice that people make also, where they're like, I don't want to have, all of Lara's extraneous descriptive language. I'm going to have only these very few key words that I have chosen to put down on the page. If I have put it there, it's because it's doing a great deal. And I think those are like a different kind of artistic prose, and they're not quite the same thing as like prose that's just getting the job done. So
Interesting.
yes, I hope that people read my works and go, wow, what lovely poetic, musical prose. That would warm my withered heart.
Withered heart, Lara says poetically. Lecha, joining us from Texas, says hot cocoa transports me to my childhood. Yes, exactly. So Lara, what scent transports you to a moment you like to be in?
Well, I brought up cut grass earlier, which feels like so cliche, but it is such a strong scent that actually so when I had been living in New York for several years in like the concrete jungle, I walked past a park where they had just trimmed the lawn, and I had this absolutely transportive moment where I was like, oh, I grew up in Ohio. So I like took a deep breath, and suddenly I was like back in small town Ohio. Someone had just, cut all the hay in the cow pasture across the road. Like my neighbor was mowing the lawn. I was mowing the lawn. Like it was just such an intense smell that you don't get a lot of in the city because there's just not that much grass.
Right.
That when I finally did smell it, it was like a punch. It hit very hard.
Lecha would like to know what inspired you to write bass notes, and did you choose the title?
Wow, I did choose the title. I mean, the inspiration definitely came from that Jude Doyle article that we linked earlier. So if you want to check that out, and will it be in the show notes?
Yes.
Yeah.
I'll
So
put that in there again.
that was the inspiration. I did choose the title Bass Notes. I am sort of notoriously bad at titling things. And I had a superstition for a long time that if I didn't get the idea for the story and the title together, that the story would not pan out. Happily, that has proved not to be true, but it is true that I often will start, especially a longer form project, being like, I don't know, just name the file something stupid and you'll title it later. So for a long time, this file was just called Fowler, which is Vic's last name, and I was like, haha, it's a funny joke because Fowler like gross. It's grosser. But it did need a title eventually. And bass notes I ended up choosing because bass notes are, like we were talking about earlier, those stinkier notes, the animalic notes. But you can also have things in your bass notes like vetiver, which is a grass, but still has that sort of like musky, chewy sort of smell to it. Bass notes are the sort of foundation of the structure of a perfume. So they're the things that are the like heavier, longer lasting smells. And I chose that because the people who go into Vic's special memory perfumes create the base note. They're the foundation for the memory perfumes. But I also chose it because of a sort of dual meaning where like the baser notes of human nature are the like uglier ones, like your lust, your anger, your rage, your sort of like unthinking lizard brain, hind brain instincts. So the base is for both the foundation of the perfume and the darker parts of human nature.
Ooh, I like it.
Ooh.
It's interesting because when I post on social media, I like it, when I post on my Instagram stories, I always try to match the name of the book to a song just to challenge myself creatively and have fun with it because I'm a dork that way. But when I typed in bass, it gave me the name of band names like Ace of Base and et cetera. And also Megan Trainor's All About That Bass, which is the
Oh
song
my
I run with,
God.
which is the
Different
opposite.
base, different base.
I'm all about that bass, which is the opposite vibe of your book, but I kind of liked the contrast. But it was so interesting that none of the actual those explanations of the word bass were in there. In any songs, it was really fascinating.
But it is interesting, right? That base, BASS, is like also about a foundation and a bottom, right? The
Yeah,
bass is
low,
always like
low.
down there in the
Yeah,
bottom of the song. Yeah.
exactly. And I spelled it BASE as per the book, but it's
But you
still.
know the people who put it on there didn't spell it that way.
Oh my goodness. Leecha says, thank you so much for answering my questions. She's giving you a flower. Thanks, Leecha.
Oh, thank
Yeah,
you.
a beautiful scent, nicely scented rose on brand there, Leecha. I see what you're doing. Very cool. Another one of the blurbs that I really loved was Publishers Weekly. And PW said, this intoxicating thriller keeps the reader guessing. With luck, Vic will be back for an encore. Will Vic be back, Lara?
Right now, Vic will not be back. Right
Adios,
now, this
Vic.
is a standalone. Sorry, Vic. I won't say that Vic will never be back. I can see returning to this story, but not like only in the sense that I would return to the character. I think that story is over. The novel story is definitely over. I would return to the character for fun because I think writing Vic was really fun. I think the book is very funny. I know that it is incredibly gruesome and incredibly sad in many places. I think also it has some moments of pretty decent humor in it. And I know that I had a really good time writing from Vic's point of view. So I can see returning just for my own pleasure, even if it doesn't go anywhere.
Marion saying, thank you so much. Marion, great to have you here. Thank you so much for joining us. All right, I think we have time for one, maybe two more questions. So anyone have any questions, just type them right in the comments. I will see them no matter where you're watching from. I will see them. So pop them right on up. Leecha, and I just want to mention one more because I liked that PW used the word intoxicating, sort of playing with, because that's a word that often people use about perfumes or about smells. So it was kind of fun to see them use those words to describe your writing as well. Mike Omer, the New York Times bestselling author, called this book beautiful and vivid. As Vic's life starts spiraling out of control, it's difficult not to identify with and hurt for each and every one of these characters. Read at your own peril. So
but it's funny. It has funny moments.
Oh my gosh. Debbie would like to know, what are you working on next?
Okay, so what am I working on next? I haven't actually signed any contracts. My agent has some chapters. I'm waiting to hear back what we're going to do with them. It's another New York book. I promised my agent I would not write another New York book after this one, at least not for a while. And I kind of see it as like, there's Base Notes, which is like very grim. And then there's this one, which is like, I don't want to call it zany, but it's a little more like bubblegummy, where if Base Notes is like really sort of like burning Scotch whiskey, this is sort of like a wine cooler. It's a sort of rough retelling of a Scottish ballad called Tamlin, in which a young lady gets pregnant, and the father of the child is a handsome young man who has been kidnapped by the fairy court, and they're going to sacrifice him to Satan because they've got a deal where every 7 years they have to sacrifice someone to the devil for lulz. It's never really explained in the ballad like why they have this deal, but they do, and they have to sacrifice someone. And so it's going to be him. And if she doesn't want her child to be born, a natural child, if she wants her child to be legitimate with a father, she's got to stop him from being sacrificed to Satan. So
Wow.
that's the inspiration for the book, but it is actually about a girl named Sophie who's a broke millennial in New York, and she gets a job at a toxic multinational media consulting company through a referral from her friend Chris. who is having an affair with his boss, who is sort of the king of the fairies. It's very ambiguous. Like how the magic works in this book is like very ambiguous, but effectively the evil company is the fairy court. The toxic job is like Chris is going to get sacrificed to capitalism, the devil / capitalism, and it's up to Sophie to save him from his toxic job.
So heading back to the world of fantasy, what, you didn't like it over here in Mystery and Thriller
I did.
Land?
I loved it in Mystery Thriller Land.
Offended.
Let me tell you though, my first 3 books, which are sold as fantasy novels from Tor, which is a fantasy and science fiction imprint of Macmillan, they are spy thrillers. They take place in an invented world, but there's no magic, and it's definitely all about skullduggery and espionage and like backstabbing. So this is Base Notes is definitely a thriller, marketed as a thriller, but it's not like I came out of nowhere and was like, I'm going to write a thriller. It turns out that I've actually been writing thrillers for several years and just thought that I was writing fantasy novels.
Excellent. Leisha, oh my God, I love this question. Leisha wants to know, did you get to pick your book cover? Let's talk about the cover. I mean, it's such a beautiful cover. Did you get to pick it? Let's talk about the story of the cover.
I did. I mean, they sent me a couple of options, and this was actually the first one. They were like, do you like this one? And I said, this one is perfect. This is what I envisioned. This is definitely what it has to be. And then they were like, what about these other ones? And I was like, no, none of these. And we actually sort of had a back and forth about it for a bit, because apparently marketing research shows that books with darker covers sell better on Kindle. Who knew? And so they were like, but this cover's white. And I said, I know, but it's perfect. And they're like, but don't you want a dark cover? It'll sell better on Kindle. And I was like, no, I want this one. And they were like, what if we made this one purple? And I was like, no, I don't want a purple version. I want the white version with the blood splatter. But then they had to take off a little bit of the blood splatter and make it mostly look like watercolor, because there were some guidelines about how much blood they were allowed to put on the cover of the book.
What?
Yeah.
I'm kind of amazed that they gave you that much creative input, because I hear so many horror stories of people who are like, I hated my cover and they didn't listen to me, but they really did listen.
But also it helps to have a very good literary agent who is able to explain why it is important to give the cover, to give a book this particular cover, and can sort of speak to both the professional benefits and also the like creative benefits of like, well, the author's vision for the book was this, but also don't you want to appeal to this particular like set of audience? Because I had given them, they were like, give us some like comp book covers, and I said like Donna Tartt's The Secret History and Mike and Emma Evers' These Violent Delights, like, and those have white covers with like a splash or like a compelling, striking graphic. And I was like, these are the example covers, because this is the kind of readership that I'm trying to reach. And I don't think purple is like maybe that readership.
Excellent. I hosted Micah when These Violent Delights came out, and incredible book, incredible writer. So it's so great to hear that name come up. Fabulous. Okay, we have time for one more quick question. Oh, Leisha, I love this question too. Lara, we're gonna need to know if Vic is a person you knew.
Vic is no one I knew. Vic came fully formed when I was like, I got to write this story. And when I say fully formed, I mean not actually. I had not really written in first person that much, and started writing this story about Jonathan Bright, who is a sort of character in Base Notes. Vic's former boss, former mentor, former lover, first murder victim. And I was writing this short story about Jonathan, but from a first person point of view. And I didn't know who this character was, but the more I wrote in this voice, I was like, ooh, I like this person. I like this person. So Vic began as like a method to talk about another character, and then just took over, which feels very Vic-like.
Very Vic-like. Oh my gosh, I love it. Anissa is saying, thank you, ladies. This was fascinating. Oh, Debbie saying you really like symbolism in your work. Debbie likes symbolism too. Fabulous. Oh, Darla, good question. She said, tell us about your days in a hookah bar. Okay, somebody's done their research. Darla, I'm picking up what you're putting down. I'm digging it. And do you still enjoy belly dancing? Wait, what? I need to know everything about
Darla.
this.
We didn't put me on the spot, Darla. So in college, I wanted to belly dance for like most of middle school and high school because in my small town, which was like very artsy and weird, there was a belly dancing troupe. Really, really wanted to take lessons with them. Lessons were too expensive. I did not do it. When I got to college, the rec center there offered belly dance lessons for free for students. And I was like, yes, I can finally do it. So I took belly dancing all 4 years of college. I took belly dancing a little bit after college too, because the teacher had a private studio in my hometown. And then I moved away. I moved to Louisville, Kentucky. I was so broke. The whole when we ask, did I base Vic on anyone that I knew? I based the experience of being a broke artist very much on my life and also the lives of other broke artists that I know. So after college, I was really, really broke, living in Louisville, Kentucky, trying to find a side hustle to supplement my meager like barista wages. And then actually I just was unemployed for like 6 months because I quit my coffee job to try to devote all my energy to finding a real full-time job. That didn't pan out. So I really, really needed some cold hard cash. And there was a hookah bar down the street from my apartment because I live near a college campus. And I walked in. This is like so. I walked in at like 3 p.m. It was totally dead, except for the owner and like a couple guys who worked there. And I was like, I've been belly dancing for like 5 years. Do you want someone to come in and belly dance nights? And they were like, what? Who
They're
are
like,
you?
"Hell yeah."
Like, I will just do it for tips. And they were like, I mean, we'll pay you like $20 and then you can carry a tip bucket. And for like a couple months, once a week, I went and belly danced in a hookah bar for tips.
This is amazing. I am loving everything about this. Leach is saying, I love your answers. Thank you for answering her questions. I am just loving that you took belly dancing for all 4 years in college and then worked as a belly dancer. Leach is saying she always wanted to learn how to belly dance. So I have a confession. I belly danced. So
Yes.
I took belly dancing too for years. And actually, belly dancing is incredibly hard. It's very, very hard to isolate just your ribs and to isolate just your hips and to get very crisp, very isolated movements, isometric movements from a specific muscle group. It's really athletically challenging, and then to make it look graceful and perfect. I still have my belly dancing chime skirt where I can like make the bells ring. This is so funny. Oh my god, I haven't told anybody.
I have like a basket, like a laundry basket full of like silk veil, nylon veil, hip scarf, hip scarf, hip scarf. I have like an outfit because I did competitions. So I've got,
Okay, Lara, you can't just drop that tasty tidbit and then not give us a link to a video or a live performance.
Oh God.
I mean, you can't just like dangle the bait and then just leave us hanging.
I'll look around. I don't know if a video exists. I think there's like one YouTube video, but it's like old. It's very old. I did in a talent show in college, I did a belly dance to Michael Jackson's Smooth Criminal, complete with single glove and fedora. But that was obviously like a very American cabaret performance. I also studied folkloric belly dance, but like, I don't know if any videos exist beyond that one. And if they do, I should probably like hire someone to remove them from the internet.
Except that I'm going to go compulsively Google this right now.
Oh boy.
Oh my God. Lara Elena Donnelly, this has been such a pleasure to host you. Thank you so much for coming on and telling us all about bass notes. Thank you to all of you who are watching. And I will see you at the top of the hour with #1 New York Times bestselling author Jonathan Kellerman, special pre-launch event here to tell us about his brand new book, City of the Dead. Lara, you're amazing. Thank you. And we can't wait to see these belly dancing videos and have you back.
I thought you were gonna be like, we can't wait to read your book. No one cares about the book. They just want to find videos of me belly dancing.
Oh my God, I forgot you wrote a book. No.
No, the book doesn't even matter.
Oh my God. Yeah, I was ready to cut 10 minutes ago, but then Darla asked this question and now we went down the belly dancing delicious rabbit hole and now I'm here for it. Everybody go get bass notes. Anissa, thank you for all the hearts. Thank you, everybody. Leisha saying thank you very much. Your book sounds great. Have a great week and stay safe. Thank you, everybody. Have a great night.